Welcome back, comrades. This is Gaming with Austin. And today, we are on episode 42 of the Utopian Community series. The most extreme version of pro-life activism. Here's an interesting fact. The most extreme version of pro-life activism is someone who not only goes against abortion, but also against the death penalty, assisted suicide, and euthanasia. That is the most extreme form of pro-life activism. Abortion should be, if you force the abortion on a woman, that's murder. But if the woman chooses to abort pregnancy, that is okay. If the woman chooses to abort the pregnancy herself. But if someone else forces the abortion on the woman against her will, that is considered murder. But if a pregnant woman gets killed, with the pregnant woman being the victim, that'd be murder. But the baby, that'd be considered for the baby inside that gets killed too, it'd be 1 count of murder plus 1 count of involuntary manslaughter. Or maybe voluntary manslaughter. Some cases of homicide are unintentional, which is called, basically, in that case, that's involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is also known as third-degree murder. Fourth-degree murder is involuntary manslaughter. What's more serious than first-degree murder? Genocide. Because that is an automatic first degree. Because it's almost always planned out. Genocides are almost always planned out. You can't do a terrorist, in order for it to be considered a terrorist attack, it must be planned out. Most of the domestic terrorists in America are not members of a terrorist group. Most terrorists do it out of their own free will. But things get worse with terrorist groups. In fact, they are brainwashed in the first stage into being a long-time member. Like Al-Qaeda. They were responsible for 9/11 and the World Trade Center bombings. And who helped fund Al-Qaeda for that? Us Americans did. The American government. The American government helped fund Al-Qaeda for that. Albeit indirectly. America do this to their own people? How could America do this? They need to stop. Because if they keep funding terrorist groups, basically crime rate's gonna keep going up. If we allow parents to raise self-entitled kids, and another thing that'll cause the murder rate to go up, is if we keep funding our terrorist groups. What I see as a terrorist group, the Ku Klux Klan is an example of a terrorist organization. Now, as we become more and more dependent on technology, there'd be a new form of terrorism. Like, who adheres to the Unabomber's ideology, in which he hated modern he had an extreme hatred towards modern technology. His goal was to bring America, the whole world, back to the Stone Age. That type of terrorism is called insurrectionary anarchism. Capitalism is driving a lot of countries into plutocracy. And that plutocracy is what's going to drive the whole world, and it's going to drive a famine on a global level, as the government would start allocating the food to the rich people. Workers deserve more support. They deserve more respect too. The proletarians need more. They deserve more support. While the bourgeoisie, they need to be taxed. Even if they're dead, they have to be taxed. The remaining relatives of Hitler decided to not have any more kids with the family name Hitler, which meant that the Hitler family name has died out. There's more than one family that shares the Trump family name. You know, in the Middle East, you can only give your child an Arabic name because of Sharia law. Even though I'm not religious or anything, I tend to follow 5 of the 10 commandments as part of my moral code. I use 5 of the 10 of them as my simplified moral code. Like, you shouldn't kill, steal. Bearing false witness means to spread fake news. With adultery, you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful if you commit adultery. You shouldn't just respect your elders, people should respect one another. You shouldn't kill, with the like, it only applies to those, like, what I mean by, like, but in the case of abortion, it's up to the woman, if she wants to commit abortion. I don't go towards the commandments that respect the deity. I'm fine with adultery, but you gotta be careful if you do it. You gotta be careful if you're gonna commit adultery, be careful. Coveting means to be greedy. Even if you don't believe in God, 5 of the 10 commandments are basically your moral codes. Like, it's not just in Christianity that they use it for all 10 commandments. The reason we can't get rid of every lazy person on this planet is, what if there was a famine? And there was no lazy people? There would be a greater chance of humanity going extinct. What if there was a famine? What if there was a famine? You shouldn't just respect your parents. You shouldn't just do it. You shouldn't just respect your parents. You should respect one another. We should all respect one another. Whether it be your parents, your friends, or yourself. When it goes to respecting your health, you gotta make sure to stay healthy. Sometimes being lazy is a good thing if you're in the middle of a famine. If you're in the middle of a famine, you literally don't have a choice. Coveting means to be greedy. Which is what a lot of rich people are. My theory of communism, what we need is, like, one of the concepts would be the Bill of Rights. Freedom of religion is crucial, in my theory. mistakes can help you improve. You know, the mistakes that you make throughout your life can help you improve in life. Making mistakes is okay because those mistakes you make can make you a better person. Because you'll learn from those mistakes to make sure it doesn't happen again. Even though Portugal is slightly lower on the democracy index compared to America, in the end, they have more civil liberties than we do. They tend to be more of a libertarian socialist compared to us Americans. Eventually, America would go from a democratic capitalist society to a capitalist dictatorship. To becoming a capitalist dictatorship. The most extreme form of authoritarian capitalism is fascism. It's basically the most extreme and invasive form of capitalism. My idea for the housing units in the commune that I'm gonna do is the housing units, it'd be a compound. Like, everybody would have their own living room. And there'd be a lobby where people would, where all the communards would go to vote. There'd be a lobby where all the communards would go to vote. You know, it's possible to be moral without being religious. There are atheists who tend to have a strict moral code. I see being... You're okay to disrespect your deity. I get that. Because there's no law regarding that says that you have to respect the supreme being, if even like if it does exist. My belief is that there's a growing trend that like the evidence that God doesn't exist is growing more and more. Greed is no longer necessary in the modern world for our basic needs. America used to have the best education in the world, but now they have the worst education in the developed world. All thanks to militarism. That some politicians thought it was a good idea to cut taxes on the rich. It's never good to cut taxes. What if they should have put put a wealth tax in the Constitution? That would have been better. What limits the power of the King of Saudi Arabia? Sharia law limits the power of the king. You know, religious communism is also known as theocratic communism. democratic communism means the government is ruled by the people. They're very progressive. The government, like the state is ruled by the people for the people. Like between progress and tradition, they're very progressive. And the resources can regenerate themselves pretty quickly because of the overproduction of capital goods. The more capital goods you have, the more likely we'll be able to achieve self-sufficiency within the next couple of years. If you put it, the more capital goods, and capitalism is all about profit. Greed is good for few, but bad for many. There are more workers, there are more working classmen than there are bourgeoisie people. The proletarians outnumber the bourgeoisie by a lot. Which means if a revolution was to happen, chances of success would be much higher. The most extreme form of capitalism is fascist capitalism, where basically the government's extremely reactionary, their economy is laissez-faire capitalism. They're ultra-nationalistic, meaning they adhere to the most extreme form of nationalism. They adhere, like between liberty and authority, they adhere to the most extreme form of totalitarianism. The most complete form of totalitarianism is brutalitarianism, which basically means the totalitarian regime would employ extreme police brutality, along with military brutality. There'd be non-stop competition to see who becomes the strongest of the strong soldiers out there. Like, basically, they would stage a fight within the country to see who really is the strongest. Everybody would be required by, basically, the Hunger Games type fascism. The dictatorship in Panem in the Hunger Games is the closest the closest real-life counterpart to Panem in the Hunger Games under President Snow. The closest real-life counterpart is Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. The straight-up opposite of fascist capitalism is basically libertarian communism. That is the straight-up opposite of fascist capitalism. Fascist capitalism is the most extreme form of capitalism, which is what the world is heading to as a result of the rise of the far right. Authoritarianism's on the rise on the global level. We need to stop the rise of the dictatorships, the far-right dictator. We need to stop the rise of the far right, and bring forth the rise of the far left. Like, what I mean by bring forth the rise of the far left, I don't mean rise of the Stalinists. I mean the rise of the far-left libertarians. If we want to become more self-sufficient, we gotta produce more capital goods. Consumer goods, production should stay the same. Stuff like that. What you...
And, third thing. Do you want Mom or I to take you to work tomorrow?
I'd like for you to take me to work, John.
So you're fine leaving early tomorrow?
Or maybe Mom could take me. Okay. What I mean by bring forth the rise of the far left, I don't mean bring forth Stalinists. Because I oppose Stalinism. What I mean by bring forth the rise of the far left, I mean far left libertarians. The rise of the left libertarians. Because together, we're gonna fight climate change. The diet that can help, like, one thing that can help us fight climate change, we gotta change the foods that we eat. The proletarians outnumbered the bourgeoisie by about 99 to 1. We need an economy that is good for the working class. Why would we allow the rich to get super rich in the first place? How could we do that? Why would we do this? This is just wrong. There's a biological reason we don't work without incentives. Our body prioritizes survival over everything else. Our bodies prioritize survival over everything. The ultimate incentive to economic planning, my ultimate incentive is the end of world hunger. The reversal of climate change. Like, the problem with trying to get rid of all the CO2 on this planet is that volcanoes they're CO2 producing machines we have no control over. Those are called volcanoes. It's not just factories in our cars that pump CO2 into the atmosphere. There are areas that are natural that produce CO2 too, as well. Like volcanoes. When you breathe, you always produce CO2. Regardless of how much CO2 you breathe in, you're going to breathe out more than you breathe in. If you stay in a hyperbaric chamber for too long, too much oxygen can damage your cells. Same thing with having too little. If the Earth was basically a hyperbaric chamber, we'd end up dying from oxygen toxicity. Because our lungs cannot handle having too much oxygen. with the obesity crisis, it's not entirely our fault we're making our kids overweight, because some kids are already overweight from birth. There are people out there who are overweight today who had a heavy birth weight, who ended up becoming overweight before they turned 1 year old. This is a problem we have. Some of those obesity problems are caused. Some of the obesity is related to genetics. There are some reasons why our cells cannot divide perfectly. Sometimes your cells are not supposed to do. Sometimes your cells are not supposed to do that. Sometimes your cells are not supposed to do that. And if they did, that'd mean that none of the animals would be fit for surviving and would have the same. Like, if all the animals had the same fitness for the environment, like, basically, some of it's related to Charles Darwin's survival of the fittest, which explains why it's so hard to kill head lice with chemicals. Charles Darwin was right. Anyways, this is it for this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked this video, dislike if you disliked it, subscribe for more, share this with your comrades on social media. As always, thank you for watching, stay tuned for more, and peace out.